Hi, welcome to another Crabs, Goats and Goats. My name's Anthony Wilson, welcoming you to Sagittarius season. Well, we've been in there for quite a while now. We've been in Sagittarius season for about 10 days, but this is particularly to do with the new moon tomorrow, which is, of course, is a solar eclipse. Solar eclipse in Sagittarius on the 4th of December, Saturday. So looking at that, and also looking at the transits around that for the next couple of weeks. So Venus will be approaching, well, it is approaching Pluto and will conjunct Pluto a week on Sunday, and it'll be around Pluto for a while because it's turning retrograde. It's moving quite slowly already. So Venus-Pluto conjunction, going to be having looking at that. Eclipses in general, Sagittarius in general. Not too long today, but let's try and get as much in as we can. So Sagittarius season, does it feel optimistic? Are you looking forward to the future more? Sagittarius is a sign that doesn't dwell on the past. It moves forward. It sees opportunities, possibilities, openings that other signs don't see. It's the kind of adventurer sign, ruled by Jupiter, of course, which is supposed to bring good fortune, among other things. But I always think of Sagittarius as kind of confident and stylish. If you think of like Billie Eilish, I think Billie Eilish, Jimi Hendrix, Jay-Z, Keith Richards, these are all people in the music scene that seems to be cool without trying, like a sort of effortless cool. Which for me is Sagittarius. That they just drip style without really trying, and I'm jealous. No, okay. So it's an important time for Sagittarius and for Gemini, these signs, because we've been in an eclipse cycle for about 18 months. Of those two signs, we've been having solar and lunar eclipses in Sagittarius and Gemini since around June 2020. So in that time, people with Sagittarius and Gemini strong, especially Sun and Ascendant, I think we can say with eclipses. So if your Ascendant is in one of those two signs or your Sun, then there will have been turning points over the last 18 months, and if there hasn't been a major development in that time, then maybe this one, the eclipse, is going to bring that. We don't know with eclipses whether that will necessarily be positive or negative. It's not necessarily indicates one or the other in general, although probably a solar eclipse, like all new moons, can indicate a new start. But more than anything, it indicates a turning point, a mark in the sand. I talked about this in the previous eclipse videos, but solar eclipses are about new beginnings as much as climaxes, which is the lunar eclipse. So this weekend brings sort of the last defining moment of that cycle for Sagittarius and Gemini. It also will apply to you, whatever sign you have that axis in, whatever house you have that axis in. So look at your chart and where Sagittarius, especially with this weekend, but Sagittarius and Gemini, what is the axis? I mean, if it's in your second house, for example, if you have Scorpio rising, then it would be about money or property or personal security. But whatever house Sagittarius falls in, look at how the last couple of years have affected that area of your life, and you'll get a clue to what kind of climax, what kind of turning point this eclipse will bring this weekend. It's not quite as dramatic as the lunar eclipse transits and the run up to that. I mean, the November transits were pretty dramatic, but it is a time when you should kind of take stock, see what happens, see what's there. New moons are usually associated with new ventures or making decisions, putting things into motion, but eclipses are more not really a time to kind of initiate out of the blue. They're more a time to recognize and see what direction you need to go in. and in a sense, decisions make themselves. A solar eclipse is just like, okay, now I understand what to do. The other thing to say about eclipses is that they're not always apparent at the time of them what the direction or the change is. But if you look back, you can see at that moment there was a point where things weren't the same afterwards. So there is the there is also this idea that looking, I mean, I've done this for myself. I mean, eclipses affect me quite strongly because my moon is so strong in my chart. I'm in Cancer and Cancer rising. That often I don't see the effect of eclipse until 6 months after, the real effect of it until 6 months afterwards. And that can be positive or challenging. I mean, it can be one or the other. It can be the transits around this eclipse are quite difficult because you've got Saturn square Uranus, of course, which is an exact square for the last time in late December. And Venus approaching Pluto is not that easy, but we'll look at that in a moment. But generally speaking, this eclipse could still be positive for you, depending on what direction it pushes you in. More on the signs of Sagittarius and Gemini, just to give you an idea of how this eclipse works. So, as people with the sun in this sign, they're often a lot of fun. You know, they love to laugh and joke and socialise. They also don't really worry about how that enjoyment of life affects others or their environments, and that's the downside of those signs. They tend not to worry too much about the effects of what they do are, and often, you know, they're easy to forgive because they're people that are honest and open quite often. But they can be kind of messy, disorganized, wasteful. These are kind of typical negative aspects of these signs. And just to give an example of how the eclipses work, I mean, what eclipses can do is they can bring chickens home to roost. So if you look at Boris Johnson and Donald Trump, they're both Geminis, and they both have this kind of lackadaisical kind of attitude to truth. And in the last year or two, I mean, obviously Trump suffered. Well, he suffered at the eclipses this time last year. So, you know, that brought the turning point for him, where, you know, he couldn't just throw things around and see where they landed anymore because he lost his job. And then Johnson, on the other hand, who's a lot more popular than Trump. I don't think people realise how popular Johnson is in the UK compared to how popular Trump was, because Trump's ratings as a president were always low right from the start, and the media not totally on his side. Whereas in the UK, opposition to Boris Johnson's pretty lame. I mean, there's not much in the media, and he seems to survive despite being in. I mean, he does survive despite being head of a government that, with the Brexit that it initiated, it hasn't really delivered it in any kind of way that's practical for the UK. There's still huge problems, and they don't seem to have a plan. And this is a side of what I'm talking about. Is this kind of not really looking after the nuts and bolts of the ideas you're throwing around. And Gemini is very big on ideas, but in this case, practicality is low. Now, he has, during this eclipse season, seen the ratings, the opinion poll ratings of his party, the Conservatives, dip. They've come down to kind of being level with the opposition, which is Labour. So this may in the future be seen as a turning point for him. So we'll see about that. I'm not convinced personally. I have no faith in the UK public at the moment to actually I don't know, recognise what's going on, or I would like to say, but that's up to them. So yeah, that's how eclipses can work as a kind of turning point. They build pressure and they bring something coming that's due to that person in a sense, and in a good or a bad way. They can bring positive things. If you've been waiting for something and done work to build the conditions for something, this could be a time when it comes through. So and the biggest thing of all is that Sagittarius and Gemini, especially Sagittarius, I think will, with that south node end of the eclipses having been through their sign, I think Sagittarius will breathe a bit of a sigh of relief once these eclipses have done. So they can probably look forward to an easier time of it in 2022. Okay, I'm going to flash the chart up now for the next couple of weeks because I just want to show the conjunction of Venus and Pluto and the square of Saturn and Uranus, just so we get an idea of those in the context of what's going on at the moment.
So here you can see the chart for the new moon on Saturday the 4th of December. Mercury is also in Sagittarius. Mars is still in Scorpio, still grinding its gears up against Saturn, really, because it's still square by sign, but less pressure than we've been experiencing in previous weeks. And it's out of orb now with Uranus as well, so there's still tension around, and fixed signs are still finding that tension around with Mars in Scorpio. So it's not the most positive and dynamic of new moons as new moons go, but it will feel a bit lighter, I think, for many people than the previous few weeks. Venus, you can see here, is approaching Pluto. Now it's very slow, so if we move the chart on day by day, you can see Venus comes closer and closer to Pluto. This is Wednesday next week. You can see here it's just moving towards Pluto there, and it finally conjuncts Pluto around the 12th of December, which is Sunday week. Then it will start to retrograde, and you can see even on the 29th of December, towards the end of the month, New Year, Venus is still basically very close to Pluto. So let's have a look at that. Now, Venus isn't weak in Capricorn. It expresses itself quite well in Capricorn. It likes Earth signs with value. Venus is about value, and Capricorn is about understanding value. So it's a time when it's about not how much something is worth, but what something is worth to you, and how much you can, because Pluto asks questions of any planet that conjuncts it. Let's take this back to the new moon. And it really needs to be to understand what something's really worth, and Venus is also about how much something is worth. And in Capricorn, it's like there's going to be a lot of questioning and searching. Is this real? Is this worth something, or is this not? Now, look at where this falls in your chart. Now, say you have Cancer rising, for example, it would be in your 7th house, and that would be very interesting, because a one-to-one relationship will be seen for how deep it is. It will question the depth of that and what it really means to you. If it's in the 2nd or the 8th house, money is inevitably involved with this conjunction. So that's something to really check out and see what see how that goes, and keep a careful eye on what happens money-wise, because I mean it could work both ways, a Venus-Pluto conjunction in terms of money, but it also is to do with power and people taking advantage. So Pluto and Venus, yeah, they have a kind of sexual vibe in a birth chart, in the sense that somebody understands that power of sexuality, and but it also is also connected with people taking advantage of other people sexually. So in money, it's the same thing. Venus is love and money in a sense, in a very basic sense. And in both those areas, this conjunction is about who pulls the strings. And it can bring up some quite difficult questions. It could also bring up some very interesting experiences. So it's an interesting one to look at, and it's already in play. I mean, we're looking at the new moon here. It's close to Pluto already, but it's very much a theme of December. The conjunction became within 5 degrees of orb a couple of days ago, before the new moon, and then it's in play, as we said, until January in terms of a close conjunction. It's still around in January, because Venus turns around once it stations and heads towards Pluto again. So it's one where you need to make sure that you know how to get the best out of a situation, how to make sure that it's doing everything it needs to do for you. And if you know, if people around you have this conjunction on their ascendant or midheaven, you could see developments there involving them. So I would say watch that carefully. Then also this month, the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. We can see Saturn here at 9 degrees of Aquarius, and Uranus is at 11 degrees of Taurus. So Saturn will soon, we move this on a couple of weeks, there we go, on the 25th of December it's already gone past being exact as a square, and it's pretty much square on Christmas Eve. So 24th of December. So December is also this build up, and this, we've talked about this transit a lot, of Saturn square Uranus over the last year or so, because it's been very much a theme of the year, with it being to do with structures, things breaking down, old structures needing change and renewal, and just basically cracks appearing in anywhere that isn't solid and stable, because Uranus and Taurus does this. It forces something to be new when it's old. Taurus has, the staying power of Taurus finally gives up, and Uranus says, no, this is not good enough. You're going to have to radicalize this, or it's not going to work. And Saturn square it has brought this pressure to Aquarius as well, and all the fixed signs, because Leo and Scorpio included, because they all are faced with this need for change that isn't easy to put into play, and this is the key to the year. The need for change is obvious to people affected by this Saturn square, this Uranus Saturn square. It's obvious to everyone that something has broken, in a sense, but how to change it when you have all this pressure around it. These are the questions that have been really tough this year, and Saturn approaching this final time that it's been wavering around this square point, and it's finally passing the square point on the 24th of December. And that doesn't mean it'll be over on the 24th of December. Those difficult questions will remain while Saturn's in Aquarius, which is for another year. But it will get easier, especially if your fixed sign planets are in the first decan of Aquarius. I would say that people with stuff in the first 10 degrees of the fixed signs in general can look forward to an easier 2022 than 2021, and questions are easier to answer in 2022 and 2021. And I would say that for all the fixed signs in a sense, but there's still a lot of pressure around. And of course, Venus will go into Aquarius later in 2022, but we'll deal with that when it comes. So it's a mixed bag, December, and this eclipse perhaps is pointing us to look at where we can improve things, look at where things can get better, because things can get better. And Sagittarius is about looking forward and being optimistic. So we may be finding now some optimism after this difficult year, following on the very difficult year of 2020. Of course, we've seen that worldwide, not just astrologically, and so it figures that 2022 being easier astrologically, hopefully worldwide will also be easier, but we will see about that. So that's my optimistic note to end on. Of course, we haven't even talked about Jupiter in Pisces, which I will do next time, because I will, on the next full moon, I'll be here on the next full moon. So let's just move this back just to quickly remind, quickly remind people that Jupiter will be going into Pisces on what day? On the 29th of December. So really a new year, new Jupiter sign, really. So Jupiter moves into Pisces very late on in the month, and almost as we're into 2022, and that should really change things. Not necessarily all for the better, but there's certainly, I think there's stuff to look forward to, which we'll talk about next time at the full moon, which must be 2 weeks from, must be around the 18th or 19th of December. But I'll see you again before then, and I will try to get that one out earlier. I'm doing things way too much at the last minute at the moment, but I'll try to get that one out earlier, and we can look at the full moon a few days before it. All right, so enjoy the whatever December means to you, whether it's winter or summer where you are, whether it's a festive season in terms of the country you're in or whatever. But I think December's a great month personally. I always love it, with my Venus and Mars in Sagittarius, and I'm already feeling it strong. So let's have a good one, and take care, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much.